This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Mac and Jack Show. I am the third host today as we welcome back Mac back to the program after a little bit of a hiatus, looking great. And of course, Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hurst also in the mix. We got a three-man panel today for the first time in a long time. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Hey, good morning. And I think Mac is here coming back to issue me back my Yankee card that he took away from me because I said this year would be a complete flop. And then they got off to the historic start. And now, Mac, they look like they're on their way to a historic collapse.
Let's not jump the gun, Jack. I mean, we're talking about the Yankees. We're not talking about Boston right now, or the Mets. So I think the Yankees will be fine come the end of the year.
I want to know how somebody who's a Mets fan could take away any Yankee cards from anybody. So that's just my question. You know, it's like him saying, you know what, you lose your Jets card in the process. You know that he's able to take away these cards, and he's a Giants fan and a Mets fan. How is that even possible?
Well, the Jets are a story on themselves. I mean, if you live through them from high school to Social Security, that's a story that no Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Well,
that's 69. You got a Super Bowl.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, when they say a Super Bowl like that lasts you a lifetime, okay? And you're a kid. They say, but it'll last you a lifetime. I didn't think they literally meant it at the time.
Well, and I mean, at least you were alive for it. You think about all these Cowboy fans that are out there that love to talk about how they have 5 rings, but they weren't alive to see any of them.
Yeah,
like that. There are players in the NFL. Any rookie that goes in the NFL doesn't ever remember, the heyday of the Dallas Cowboys because they weren't alive. So
you got social media though.
Yeah, it's like, hey, listen, I don't know that they show all of these, I don't know how well they show all of those. I don't know if anybody's got a VCR that plugs into the computer. That's the hard part about trying to find out how see these old games back in the day. Yeah, you gotta have.
They used to have them on before the Super Bowl. You used to be able to watch, all the previous Super Bowls play, and listen. There were some great games back then, right, Jack?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a golden age of sports. I mean, people forget even the NFL. There was a golden age before the Super Bowls took place. Even the NBA. I mean, people forget there was a golden age. Like even in the 60s, you hear comparisons. Steph Curry, is he the greatest point guard with the possible exception of Magic Johnson? And if I tell anyone that Oscar Robertson was actually slightly better than Magic Johnson, they'll give you a triple take. Like, what are you talking about? That Oscar's this old timer. He couldn't keep up with the modern guys. I mean, I saw him play. I mean, there was no one quite like him.
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly it. Everybody is always going to have that thought process saying, "Oh, well, what happened back then wouldn't be able to happen now because the game is so much evolved." And I disagree with that. It's those. I think that those old teams could definitely compete in this new era. I think from the moment that they instituted the 3-point line, that started to change the game a little bit, and then obviously it's evolved now to it's an exterior game rather than an interior game. And if you still have that paint game, you're going to win a lot of games. That's how Boston got to the finals. Because of their interior game, then they went away from it in the finals against the Warriors. Instead of playing in the paint, getting every rebound. They started to try to hit 3-pointers because they weren't scoring as many points. Draymond Green was starting to actually have an effect inside the paint, and that's what kind of did the Celtics in. And who knows? Maybe this year the Celtics will have a new player that can help them get over that hump. Could possibly be that the Sixers have a new player to
What are
help
you
them get over
talking
that.
about, Pags? Anyone could have a new player. Which player? I mean, talk. You mean Kevin
That
Durant?
I'm talking about Kevin Durant. That Kevin
But
Durant
for who?
is.
You got to deal with reality here. People don't deal with reality. For example, Deshaun Watson is out 11 games now. I'm sure that you're going to mention the news, the settlement, the 11-game suspension, the Players Association in the league compromised on that with a $5 million fine. Everyone is saying, get Jimmy Garoppolo. Cleveland should now get Jimmy Garoppolo. They need him for the 11 games. 2 factors. What do you do with Jimmy Garoppolo after 11 games? You really think he's going to want to be a backup? You're going to make him one of the highest paid players on your team to be a quarterback backup after 11 games? I mean, it's not going to work. Are you going to give a bunch of draft choices for a guy for 11 games? I mean, give me a break here. People don't deal in reality.
What draft choices are they going to give? What draft? They gave away most of their drafts, the next couple of years of drafts to Houston. So do they even have any draft picks?
You could go further into the future if you want. But the point I'm trying to make is people aren't dealing with reality. There's a cap in the NFL. You can't just sign whoever you want when you want to sign them. If that were the case, Jerry Jones would be loaded for the Cowboys. That would be bad for you, Pax, bad for your Eagles. Because Jerry Jones would be signing guys left and right if he could go over the cap.
Well, yeah, but him trying to buy a Super Bowl doesn't always work. I mean, trying to buy championships doesn't automatically assume that you're going to win that championship. As far as I know, the only person that really, in my lifetime, short of maybe Steinbrenner during the late 80s and 90s, but he didn't even really do that well then. I guess it was more in the 2000s. Was Wayne Huizenga from the Marlins, where he bought his World Series ring. He literally put together the team. He did it. He got rid of all the players, got an all-star team together, and they won the World Series, and then he sold them right afterwards.
Well, is there anything wrong with that? Let me ask Mac, what's the difference between the Met owner, Steve Cohen, who's spending this crazy money on, Max Scherzer, Francisco Lindor, and he's going to do it again in the offseason, between him and George Steinbrenner? I mean, what is the difference? Steinbrenner was perceived as a bit of a bully, the way he fired people, and Steve Cohen's perceived as a bit more of a gentleman, but they operated the same way, didn't they?
Yeah, they definitely did. I mean, if you look at it, Steinbrenner's the way he went about things was he went against not only the coaches, but the players too. And Steve Cohen right now, I mean, he has his Twitter account, I think, and social media. He's on social media a lot, but they both operate the same, Jack.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think Steve Cohen actually has more baseball people in place. So when he says something, it's not really, influential on the team. Where George Steinbrenner was, he was in essence the GM. Even though he had a GM in place, he was the one meddling all the time. He wanted to win championships, and he knew how to do it for a while. So, I mean, he was doing really well. And then, of course, things have ebbs and flows. It's the same thing with Jerry Jones right now. Jerry Jones, he was able to put together the first 3 Super Bowls, literally, and they won that 3rd Super Bowl in spite, literally that Jimmy Johnson wound up still taking them to that Super Bowl, even though they had Barry Switzer do it. But ultimately, it caught up to him.
Don't give Jimmy Johnson any credit for that at all.
Really?
Listen,
you think Barry Switzer was an ultimate coach here?
Wait. I don't get it. The year before, when they went 2 Super Bowls in a row with Jimmy Johnson as the coach, Jimmy Johnson benefited by the greatest trade in NFL history, the Herschel Walker deal. He benefited by that. Okay, great. And then he leaves after the 2 Super Bowl wins. Barry Switzer's the coach. They don't win. They lose in the NFC Championship game. Barry Switzer gets blamed. The following year, they win the Super Bowl, but you don't want to give Barry Switzer credit. You want to give Jimmy Johnson the credit, but you don't give him the blame when they lost the year before. And I'm going to say something. Jimmy Johnson went to the Miami Dolphins. They didn't exactly light it up. What? In the 4 years he was there, they won, they won 2 playoff games. He didn't improve on what Don Shula did. He didn't improve on it at all. I mean, let's look at it. And when they went head-to-head against the Cowboys, those Dolphin teams, they never beat the Cowboys. I think they played them 3 times. Cowboys beat them each time. Barry Switzer kicked Jimmy Johnson's butt head-to-head when he came back with the Dolphins. I mean,
the team was already built. The team was already built. Do you think that they add any significant pieces in between 93 and 95? I don't think they did. They still had the main 3, which was really who they were. They had a pretty good defense that was able to really hold teams in check. It really was the 49ers that they had to hold in check, because that was really the team that had the best chance of winning outside of Dallas.
Right. So they lost there. But listen, Jimmy Johnson did a heck of a job with the Cowboys. He should be in their Ring of Honor. I don't know what Jerry Jones is waiting for. He said 2-3 years ago, he goes on CBS with the crew. He says, oh, yeah, Jimmy's getting into the Ring of Honor. I mean, guys, how many names can they put on the Ring of Honor? The Giants just announced 5-6 guys they're going to put on again. How much space is there in the ring? That's what I kind of wonder about.
Well, they keep just shortening up the names some. They start to abbreviate some of these names.
But if you can't read your own name there and you're a player and you're looking and you're searching, it's I don't know. I mean, listen, it's a massive honor because they have a ceremony. The player comes back. I don't mean to diminish it, but maybe Jerry Jones has the right idea. They limit the amount of names they put in there. Our own Jim Jeffcoat, we'd love to see him in the Ring of Honor, but we can understand if they have very few names there. It's a little more understandable.
Well, maybe they put another panel underneath the first panel, and then they can put the names on there, right? That's simple.
Then they could have 2 rings. The upper ring and the lower ring.
Right.
Yeah, this show, for example, could have like a Mac and Jack sports show, Ring of Honor, and Mac could keep saying, oh, Byron Williams is going to get in the Ring of Honor, and we'll leave Byron will be waiting.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's kind of like Pete Rose. Pete Rose has been waiting all this time to be able to get himself into the Hall of Fame. He's not going to get into the Hall of Fame until he's dead. And they're waiting for him to die so that they can actually put him in there posthumously.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. Shoeless Joe Jackson isn't in.
I understand that, and truth of the matter is that he should be in too. I can't, out of all the Hall of Fames, I can't stand baseball the most because they're the ones. I feel like baseball and the way basketball does their MVP voting, where they have all these writers. When the one writer said, I didn't even watch enough games, he asked who he should pick with his, and this is a guy on ESPN talking about, hey, I had a vote for the MVP and I chose Luka because that's what my tech said. Because the tech was a New York fan and doesn't like Philadelphia, so he asked him not to vote for Embiid when he didn't really see any of the games, didn't know anything to what he was talking about, and just made a vote because that's what his intern said. That's ridiculous. You should lose your vote after that, especially since you said that out loud. You're making a farce of everything. Well, I didn't watch any of the games, but I'm going to make a vote. Come on now.
You said something that's very thought-provoking. Let me ask Mac. The MVP vote, should it be just left up to the players, but they should be given guidelines and understand if it's a last-place team? Let's say it's the Chicago Bears go 4-13 this year, but one of their players is incredibly good, better than anyone else in the league.
They
And
have a
whatever,
running back that runs 2,200 yards. We'll call
right?
it like that.
Okay. He should absolutely shouldn't be the MVP because the team, what did he do for the team? Really, that's what it comes down to.
Right.
So you give the players guidelines. Should they be the ones to vote on the writers at all, not the media? Because the players around the league would seem to be more familiar with one another than the media would be with them.
Yeah, I mean, them and the coaches, right? The coaches know what's going
Coaches,
on
maybe.
during the game. So, yeah, those are the ones that should be voting. And we don't make the reporters public knowledge either. So, they say it's protecting them, but again, it's hurting the voting. So, I mean, you've got to give their names out, and you've got to let them deal with the wrath that comes with that. So, I don't know.
I agree. And like I said, just it was what was it? Mike. Yeah, it was Mike. I don't even know. It wasn't Golick. It was the other Mike, that little squirrely looking,
Greenberg.
weasel looking guy. And I can't. I like I said, I can't stand him to begin with, and then to go out and say out loud, "Hey, well, I didn't watch any of these games. I just asked my intern who to choose, and my intern's not a Philadelphia Sixers fan. In fact, he hates the Sixers because they always beat the Knicks. So he decided to have me vote for Luka, and I really should have voted for Embiid." Are you kidding me?
Let me ask you this, Pags. There's so many games going on. Let's be honest about it. How much can you watch? And you kind of get a sense. Luka or Embiid, if I'd be voting, I wouldn't be voting based on the amount of games I saw. How many games am I actually seeing Luka and Embiid actually playing? I'm seeing them play in snippets, kind of, short intervals. Like I'll tune and I'll see a Sixer game on ESPN. I'm usually not going to be watching the whole game, sitting there, glued to the TV. That's going to be rare unless it's a playoff game. I'll see there 5 minutes left in the game. I'm going to maybe bear down and watch the last few minutes of a tight game. But that's going to be about it. We don't really watch the games in detail, but we get a sense. We read about what they're doing, the value of it. We'll see the Mavs were down 12 points with 6 minutes, and then Luka went on a run. So we kind of get a sense in that way.
So here's my argument to that. First off, you could tell that he didn't watch any games. He didn't watch either one of these players. He had no idea. Didn't see any highlights, didn't do anything. Went ahead and specifically said, I didn't watch enough basketball to really make a vote. So I asked my intern to make the vote, and he voted with his heart because he doesn't like Philadelphia teams. It was all put out there. So he's the one that put it out there and outed himself. So literally he should get removed from any future voting whatsoever. If you ain't paying attention to the league and you ain't covering the league right, then you don't get to vote for the MVP. That all being said, it's different that I have. So especially with a big boxing match coming up, this is going to make a little bit of sense here. It has been kind of well known that if you are the champion and it goes to the cards, that it's really hard, unless you get knocked out as the champion, that you are going to lose that belt. Most of the time you keep the belt because that's just how it's always been done in boxing. To do this in the NBA, if you're an NBA MVP, if you're going to be back-to-back, you need to have a better season than you did the year before to really be back-to-back. That you can't just be – they're not just going to give it to you because there's a lot of other good players that are in the league. And the fact that they gave this guy back-to-back. He had a worse season than he did the previous year. He has no defensive skills whatsoever. He barely made it into the All-Pro. You know what I mean? When you had Embiid, who led the league as a center, which has not been done in how many years? It was first-team All-Pro in defense, and now hold on, he's not the MVP. It made the MVP a farce, is what it did. It made it a farce. And it makes it, well, what's the point of even having it? Why even bring it up during the season. Wait till the season's over then, if that's the case. But they want to do it early because they don't want the playoffs to be involved. The truth of the matter is that Luka, he had a good team around him in the first place, and that's why they made it to the playoffs. He didn't have an MVP season, but because the writers are smacked asses that they don't know what they're doing half the time, he wound up getting voted in because they still have this little bug up their butts about the Sixers and the way that they did things with this tanking to get the big three. And that the NBA kind of did all of that other stuff to kind of hurt us. You wind up with it. We had our GM, but now the NBA says, no, you're going to have Catangelo. And then, well, what's he wind up doing? He winds up making 18 Twitter accounts, blaming it on his wife, and he looks ridiculous. Makes the NBA and the Sixers look ridiculous. And it was all a big mess. The NBA itself is a big mess. This is the reason why the inmates run the asylum.
Pax, Embiid, you could make an argument for him being the MVP. I'm not going.
There's big arguments about that, but I don't need to talk about it anymore. It's over and done with. I'm just saying the writers are ridiculous.
If you look across the league at the way a few of the players performed, it's far from clear cut. It's not.
And I disagree with your statement that if you're a last place team, you don't get a vote for the MVP. I'm going to bring in Byron Williams. Byron's in the house, and I'm going to ask Byron. We're going to pose this question right to you, just because I think that it's going to hold the most weight coming from you. We're going to do the Chicago wins 3 games this season. They win 3 or 4 games, wind up with the first, second, or third pick in the draft. However, their running back runs for 2,300 yards, has more yards than anybody's ever gained running the football, ever. Does he deserve to be the MVP of the league because he's done something nobody else has done, or because that the Bears are 3-14 that he doesn't deserve a vote?
He definitely deserves a vote. I mean, to get that many yards is unheard of. But he definitely deserves a vote, and it's voted on by the writers and the sports writers and things. So I'm thinking yes, he deserves a vote. What your record is, but it's just like Walter Payton. He had some outstanding yards, and they didn't win championships while he was running all over people. So he definitely deserve a vote because your talent and your skills speak for yourself. Wait,
Byron. It's not best player in the league. It's most valuable player. Most valuable. In other words, if he wasn't playing for the Bears and they put anyone else in his slot, they still would have been losers the same way. So what's his value to the team? If he took his team at least to the playoffs or contended for a playoff position, even if they didn't make the playoffs, but he elevated a bad team into a playoff contender at least, that's value, then he's valuable. I mean, if he's a loser, that it's an individual performance. If the team's still a loser, no matter what he does, how can you say he's an MVP candidate?
He's definitely an MVP candidate, I think, in my opinion, because it's based off of your performance.
Guys, straighten Byron out, please. He's not lit.
It's based off of your performance. I mean, it's not a record of the team that you play for. It's based off of what you play. Why do some guys make the Pro Bowl every year that's on losing teams? That's the same. That's
That's based on individual. But we're talking about most valuable player. I mean,
yeah. But so what I'm saying is that if their defense stinks out loud and they let up 40 points a game, and this guy is running 2,300 yards, gets 18 touchdowns, and they lose these games by 7 and 10 points each game because their defense, they got nobody playing defense. You score on them at will. Is that his fault?
No.
Exactly. I mean, I think of Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders played on a lot of crap teams, but was a great running back and deserved MVPs for the years. You know what I mean? Obviously, because
the Lions was so bad. Listen, switching sports just for a moment, A-Rod was given the most valuable player award when he played for the Texas Rangers. The Rangers were last place team. They could have finished in last place with one of us. He didn't do anything to help the team. So there was no value beyond his individual stats. I can understand if you're packing the stadium and you're making the team a ton of money, like Ohtani. I could at least understand that a little. You mean an extra 15,000 people each night. So what
But-
you mean to the franchise?
Yeah, you're making the team money by jersey sales. Those guys have their jerseys and stuff. These teams are making money off of these players that's really performing on the field. They have to put those jerseys in the store for sales, a merchandise store. So
Okay, then Tim Tebow should have been in the MVP discussion when he was with the Mets. The minor league.
no, he didn't have the best. He didn't have the best performance. How could he be an MVP?
When he was with
Right,
Denver.
just because of the
But-
sales.
Guys,
Sales
guys,
don't make it anything.
Yeah, I'm still. You
when
got to have the
Denver-
numbers. Still got to have the numbers out there on the field and perform. And it goes with a lot of things that's involved. Just think about it.
Denver Broncos, when they went on that magical run with Tebow for a little while, that one
For the
season,
MVP.
his jersey was probably the highest sell in the NFL, and they were winning.
We ain't
Tebow
talking
for
about jersey.
MVP.
Jack, we're not just talking about jersey. We're talking about performance. He got to
They
have,
performed. They won. They won. They won.
but he
with
got to have
Denver.
5,000 yards throwing the ball, 30 touchdowns, something like what Justin Herbert is doing. You know, now he's considered as an MVP.
What about the spiritual leadership when you get down on one knee? You know, Tebow over there. That was a lot of value. That was uplifting to the team.
But Tebow,
That could be uplifting all he wants. That doesn't make him an MVP.
yeah,
And it wasn't like that for Kyle Kaepernick either, was it? I mean, when he went out on a knee, everybody got pissed.
Talking different reasons, but one was religious, one was not. But that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? We're not
Right.
getting into that political arena at the moment. Yep. Let's segue a little bit since I've got Byron on here because the ruling finally came down, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are as an ex-player and as somebody who probably is a lot more in tune with players in general, being part of the NFLPA. What is your take on the Deshaun Watson ruling?
well, it's good that they got this behind them, but there's still a lot of things that he needs to do for us having going to these special meetings and learning the problem that he have. He do have a problem. I mean, he's still denying some of the things that he did. It's still wrong. And, he fortunately that he didn't get a year suspension. I think by him sitting out all last year was probably a consideration. But, the fines and things like that really doesn't matter. He loses $632 million this year, but he's going to be making $46 million next year. So, these guys still need to understand that this game needs to be cleaned up. I mean, by all standards. I mean, and the NFL Players Association is trying to do that, but also the owners and Roger Goodell got to make sure that this game is cleaned up for these players because it just somehow somebody got to start using good judgment, making better decisions, and the game needs to be cleaned up because right now it's kind of smell bad the way this game is looked at throughout the country. And I think now we got a lot of things with the social media and things like that. These players need to understand it's a big responsibility to play in the National Football League, and if so, that they need to make sure that they doing the right thing, not only for the team but for the fans and what this game was built around. So it matters, and unfortunately, you still have a lot of things going on that need to be cleaned up.
Did you or someone close to you ever get a chance to talk to Deshaun Watson, Byron?
I think now they're getting players out there to start back talking to these younger players. I think there should be a mentoring connection with older players and younger players to let them know that there are certain guidelines and things that you can do and you can't do. I know the NFLPA have that all the time. What you can do and what you can't do, and what your expectations are. And a lot of people don't understand. During training camp, the NFLPA got programs and things, especially for rookies and first-year players. You know, these guys shouldn't have no excuse and shouldn't say that we hadn't heard this before. In fact, they have heard it before because it's very detailed on what you do and what you don't do in the guidelines. You know, testing drug, they got drug policies. You know, we have all this in place, so there is no excuse for players to get into these problem areas that they're getting into.
Can I play devil's advocate for a moment? Deshaun Watson, he's maintaining his innocence. 2 different venues wouldn't press charges. It wouldn't go to a grand jury for criminal charges. So apparently, according to the law at least, he committed no criminal acts at all. So we're strictly talking morality here, okay? We're not talking about any criminal actions. And he didn't play last season. He basically was frozen out last season. He was allowed to collect his money, but he was on the inactive list. So this is close to 2 years. Do you think this is maybe a little overboard, the suspension, that it's maybe more of a PR thing? The NFL wants to look like they're taking tough action. They don't want the criticism, and everyone wants to just not look bad by giving him a lighter sentence to perception. They don't want to put up with protests. But does this fit really what he actually did? Obviously, he did something wrong, okay? I'm not sure how far he went. None of us can be sure. But 2 different locations wouldn't press criminal charges against him. So apparently he didn't, do anything. He didn't do anything that would break the law. Let's put it that way.
Well, in my opinion, he did something that did break the law for his football concern, and being a leader of your team and what you mean to the NFL as being one of the top 10 players, top 10 quarterbacks in the league. It comes with a lot of things, and so he did break the law. There was some misrepresentation with him dealing with these women and the abuse that was probably happening, and evidently just didn't come out in the facts. So, he's going through this for a reason. So it was some wrongdoing in his actions. So he had to pay for that. And I think, these players need to understand that, there's so many rules and guidelines that you have to abide by to play in the National Football League. And that's the case, you having a league that's going to become wild and unsettled, and that's not what we want. We want to establish a good product, and that's what we support. That's what you get all these rules and guidelines each and every year. Every player get a handbook, and there are certain things that you have to abide by. And then even if you dress, it's uniform. We have a uniform code conduct. You just can't go out there and wear your jersey hanging out and all this stuff. I mean, seeing like and these players are getting fined for that. After every game, if you go out there and you are dressed wrong, they automatically send you a fine. And you have to pay that fine for being dressed differently and trying to put your own little spin on how you're supposed to be dressed. Little things like that. That's big to the NFL. I mean, we have a code of conduct.
Yeah, you do.
So you're saying the young men, they get on an airplane to go play a game, and if their pants are falling down the way you see sometimes with young people,
it's not going to happen.
That won't happen with the NFL.
It's not going to happen in the NFL because, there's the expectation that, somebody going to let you know and then tell you that that's not the way we do things here with our organization. I mean, for example, I have to use Parcells, for example, and because that's who I play with more. You know what the dress codes are, and you have to abide by the dress code. I mean, they ain't gonna let you on the plane. Even though you're flying a private plane and all that, and with the reporters and stuff, but there's a code of conduct.
Yeah, they do.
So how involved does the NFL get with rehabilitating, we'll say, Deshaun Watson? I know that obviously firsthand knowledge of when Michael Vick had his issues, and he did his time and whatever. The moment that he came out, Tony Dungy was his mentor, and he was almost attached to the hip with him to be able to try to clean up the image that Michael Vick did, make sure he did everything he was supposed to do, and so that he was able to come back in the league because they knew what type of PR problem this occurred, that had just occurred. As the NFL stepping in similar in that regards, where they are going to sort of put somebody with Deshaun Watson so that they could prep him for saying the right things and doing the right things and making sure he does go through with everything he's supposed to do with his rehabilitation in this regard, so that they keep 39% of their viewing public happy, because 39% of people that watch football are women. And that's the biggest hit that the NFL was taking during all of this, is that women felt slighted about what was going on. I got to imagine not every woman out there, that some women didn't care, and maybe some women didn't even know what was going on. But ultimately, there's a rep to protect here. And how involved do you think the NFL is going to be in making sure that his image, starts to get restored, if at all?
Yeah, I think the NFL is going to be very involved, and probably might have a woman to come in and be one of those people that's really making sure that he understands what he's done completely. And I think the NFL is going to definitely be more involved with it. And now you see more teams are doing this. I mean, you got Michael Strahan, being a representative and coming in and talk to some of the players. As soon as they know that these players have certain problems and certain concerns that need to be addressed. And I think that's not a bad idea. We definitely need to have more mentoring and more inside, counseling for these guys, because, some of them are damaged good coming from where they have to come from.
Let me just detour a little as far as Deshaun Watson goes from a football perspective. He didn't play last year. He's not playing this year, the first 11 games. Let's say Jacoby Brissett does a very good, solid job. Cleveland has a good record after 11 games. They're on track to make the playoffs. Do you stay for the time being with Jacoby Brissett? Do you bring in a rusty Deshaun Watson? No matter how much he's the future of your franchise, he's going to come in pretty rusty, I think, after 11 games. And if you've got a good thing going, what do you do if you're the Cleveland Browns? Because it would be a further PR disaster if Cleveland's off to a good start with Jacoby Brissett, and then Deshaun Watson comes in and throws 4 interceptions the first game and they lose.
Yeah, that's something to think about, but I don't think they're going to have that problem, because he's still going to be practicing. He's still going to be, sharpening his skill set.
Is he allowed to practice the 11 weeks?
I don't know
not with the team.
So.
No, he's not with the team, but he's not just going to be laying up and not doing anything. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be getting his reps. And I think it's a different type of player and skill sets of a player. So he definitely have way more skill set than Jacoby. So I'm just thinking that they paying this guy. He's the face of the team now. So, they already, the owners that came out and said that, general managers, all of them came out and said that. So, I don't think there'd be no consideration, no thought whether or not, what kind of a season Jacoby is having. It's definitely the Deshaun Watson team.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, if you just look at the talent alone, Watson is 5 feet and above Jacoby Brissett, and he's been playing on a lot better teams than Brissett. So not to put him in there would be foolish. I mean, that would cause another uprising in Cleveland. And
plus, you just paid this guy $200. He signed a $232 contract. He's set to make $46 million next year. You just got it's too much invested in him, and he gonna be on that football field. No doubt, Byron.
So, and I do find it interesting that this, like I said, I'm glad that they were able to get this done and behind them now. That they're able to kind of move on from this, so that we don't have to continue to say, hey, when is this ruling going to happen? When is this going to occur? I kind of think that everything in the NFL was a little bit put on hold waiting for this. I know that the NFLPA was involved in this ruling, that they were that they also kind of understood that something more had to be done beyond the 6 games, even though they were real specific on making sure that they were behind their, the player, but that this also had to occur. And some of the things that happened within the ruling was done from the first judge, where they said that during some of these egregious situations, that the NFL has the right to double down on the amount of suspension. So because they went with 11 games, if you double that up, that's 22 games. Is the NFLPA nervous about this now? Are they trying to be proactive to try to help players not doing this? I got to imagine that with you, where you're talking about the retired guys and such like that fraternity's fairly large, and that they probably have enough of a pool to be able to start to put mentors with these players across the country. And I'm wondering how the NFLPA is spearheading so that they don't have any other players run into this type of situation.
They definitely spearheading. They're doing a lot of things behind the scenes. I mean, right now we're in the middle of changing executive director. DeMarcus Smith is getting ready to resign, and we're doing a search for his position. I was elected on the executive committee, so I did some interviewing yesterday to talk about who I think would be a good executive committee guy candidate, because I definitely like coming in with players that's been on the football field or have a law degree, and we got a lot of guys that's out there that's probably having their resume sent in that qualifies for that position. So the NFLPA have done a lot since 2010. The last collective bargaining agreement and the collective bargaining agreement, even though there was 10-year extension agreements. But we are doing a lot with chapters across the country. We got 33 chapters across the country, and we're doing a lot with chapters across the country. So there's a lot that's doing. We meet quite a bit. We do Zooms, and they trying to involve the former players with the current players just to make sure that our pensions is increased, the benefits are increased. So there's a lot of things happening with the NFLPA, and I'm glad that they said that the NFLPA was definitely involved with the suspension and the ruling of Deshaun Watson case. So yes, it's been a lot of good things happening behind the scenes, and we try to position ourselves to make sure that no player is being left behind.
What's not happened behind the scenes has been very public. Aaron Rodgers getting on his new receivers. I mean, how would you have felt if you were a rookie receiver? Remember when you were a rookie and your quarterback, let's say, was an icon like Aaron Rodgers? You'd be in awe if you were a rookie, and he's criticizing you like in a few of the guys. They don't know what they're doing. They can't catch the ball. They're not running the routes. I mean, is that tough love good? Is it bad? Is it helpful or what?
I think it's helpful. I think it's an expectation. It's an expectation, especially with the younger guys. I think, coming in and seeing the speed of the game, how much you have to learn, how much you need to know, the audibles and the change of plays, the pace of the game. And there's no room for error. And there's an expectation with Aaron Rodgers. He's the franchise, and what he say goes. And I thought that was really good that these young receivers get an education from somebody that's elite like that, iconic, like you were saying. And so I wished I could have got more of that as a young player, because now you'd be more equipped in knowing what the responsibilities are, because you cannot make too many errors on that football field.
Changes the whole game, Brian. One fumble changes the whole game around.
Or one dropped pass, because ultimately that's what he's most concerned about. That, I mean, he was just talking about how he was playing with the next Hall of Fame receiver, and then he's saying how my receiving corps stinks out loud, and it's a shame that I don't have my good receivers that I had in the past. So much so that they had to have a meeting about it.
Yeah, and then somebody got to step up. I mean, you heard it last week from Donald Driver, Jack, that you run across that middle. That's the beautiful thing about being a receiver in the National Football League, is running across that middle.
Yeah, can you get us more guests like that and get them to stay a little longer? Because as soon as I asked Donald Driver the question, he left immediately. Like he was acting like, who is this clown asking me what's worse, being on the bottom of the pile?
I'm gonna have to send him your bio, know who he's speaking to. You know, you guys are famous. What's wrong with? Hey, we got to get Donald Driver.
Donald Driver never heard of us. He just on an impulse was near you, and you called him over, and he stuck his face in and figured, we would, just a couple of guys who would.
And then you had to ask him that question, Jack. He was like, "Yeah, I'm out of here. I think they're calling me for my tea time."
Donald Driver was on that, but that's a.
We had a lot of tea time too, so he would try to run in and run out. So I'm glad I was able.
So how did you guys? We'll just talk about this very briefly. How did you hit him?
Well, my team was 10 under. We one of the NFL guys, Kenyatta Wright, the president of the Oklahoma chapter, he didn't show up, so we had to rotate our shot. So I shot pretty good. We was 10 under. And then I had to immediately leave and get back to Dallas. But we was in Tulsa. The weather was really nice, and they had like 33 teams out there.
We're talking about golf. What's going on here? We're here to talk about.
Well, you know what? I only had to bring this up because I hear that Jim Jeffcoat's golf game is just so far superior to Byron's. I heard how he shot like 18 under and got a couple of eagles and stuff like that the last time he was shooting. So. I'm only hearing. It's only hearsay because I wasn't there and I didn't see any videos. So,
yes, Jim will be my caddy. Jim will be. He can't touch me. I'm too competitive. I'll beat him down like a drum.
So more reports came out this week that people were talking, and some of the players were talking how they think that there should be no more preseason. That preseason is a waste of time. And things of that. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, you played back when they still had 6 preseason games. I think when you initially started, they still had 6.
No, it was 4.
I'm thinking that you're older than you are.
I'm old, but I'm not old.
But obviously, preseason meant a lot more back when you were playing.
No, it's the same, Pax. Preseason is used as a coaching tool. So they can match the players up with certain strategies with other players to see if it works. You don't just throw anybody out there and see what they can do. There's a plan, there's a schedule in place all week before the preseason happens. I don't know how people can't realize this. It's football. It's a game of strategy. It's like a chess game. You can't just throw people out there and have them do whatever they want. That's not how football is played.
Well, I kind of like the way they're doing it now. A lot of these teams are going against each other in preseason practice. Yeah. And I think that's good because you get tired of going against the same guys all the time. And now that you have a 90-man limited on invitation on training camps, and then you have to get down, so many weeks. But, I think 2 or 3 preseason games is good. I mean, we played 4 preseason games, but, the quarterbacks usually get their timing down. I mean, and I think too, you get in shape, but it's part of a strategy I think that's really good. And what I do like about preseason, they do have guest coaches. They have some college guys, some high school guys come in and see it from that perspective. So it is definitely a learning situation for everybody that's involved. The veterans, they don't go through a whole lot. They take times off. They don't play in the early games. And they usually play in the last preseason game, a quarter, first half, or something like that. But typically, I think it's good because now you got to get back with the timing of everything, and the competition really heats up by week 1 opening game. So I'm thinking it's really good. Maybe 2 or 3 preseason games would be good if that's the case, in my opinion.
I think it just gets better as the season goes along. I mean, to get everything down preseason. Remember a couple of years ago when the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, they started out 7-5, and then they went on their run. I think you kind of get it together. Last year with the Packers, Aaron Rodgers had more or less been a holdout for, into camp, and they performed terribly, the Packers opening game, and then they got it together. So that was kind of like a continuation of preseason. you could vouch for this. It's a long season. It doesn't seem that way. 17 games doesn't sound long, but it is long. And you want to have a lot in the tank late on in the year. And if you come out and you're playing too hard these preseason games, I think it catches up to you in the long run. It's like a marathon where you want to kind of pace yourself a bit, in the early part of the race, the first half of the race. Because if you go out too hard, you're going to burn out late on. So preseason is good for guys trying to make the team, the backups, the guys who aren't going to play as much. They cherish that time. But for your really established stars, they don't want to know from it, I don't think. They'd be happy if they could show up, Byron. This is my opinion. 2 weeks before the season begins and just do their own conditioning and just fine tune and then just start the season.
Yeah, you mean take the Tom Brady preseason?
Well, I don't know what's going on. Brady's a mystery, guys. Speaking of that, I don't want to speculate, but I have a feeling it's his personal life with Giselle, him being away from the family and her making all the sacrifices. Because I watched the Brady documentaries on ESPN, so they put it all out there for the public to see. So that entitles me to give an opinion. I think there's something on the home front where, his marriage, the stakes are big here because she's sacrificed so much for him.
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, hey, I've been making jokes that obviously he had to meet the new boyfriend, so I'm still going to stay with that. I feel like that's really kind of funny. Here's my question. I know I'm just reporting.
Golf game, okay? Come on.
Hey, listen, I like to sling some mud. You got to see what sticks against the wall. Here's a question for you, Byron, because you hear about players going to different camps, and that, for instance, like Jalen Hurts went to the same camp that Tom Brady goes to, and was actually being mentored a little bit by Tom Brady and Tom Brady's coach, off-season coaching. So I hear about that sometimes. Do coaches have camps? When I say coaching, like coaches camp, where they kind of learn different techniques and ways of coaching better. I always wonder that because you never hear about stuff like that. You only hear about different guys coming in, like different college coaches. I know that Chip Kelly used to go to Patriots camp all the time because him and Belichick there, and he would go as a consultant to kind of watch that. I know that happens all the time where you have different consultants come in and watch practice for a couple of weeks and just give their opinion and give some critique on how people are coaching and such like that. But in the offseason, is there a camp of sorts that coaches go to hone their skills better?
Yeah, that's really not a camp, but I think there's a coaching, kind of like a coaching circle that guys come in and they learn the terminology and learn the concept of what some of these better coaches are doing. And they've been doing that for years. I know they have American Coaches Federation of Coaches that they have every year that tons of coaches go to. And they get in there, they get to exchanging all kind of information and terminology and things like that, concepts. And that's been going on for years. I mean, they have these coaches conference. And that's what I like about it now. They invite high school and college coaches to some of the training camps, and then you can go in and get some of the terminologies. I mean, there's kind of a lot of books out there that these coaches are sharing, and even some of the the running shoots and things like that. These high-powered offenses that they have now, you see a lot of coaches are learning that and going back and teaching it to the younger kids. So just think about the NFL. It's more of a passing, more of an entertainment types offenses that these guys are playing out there now, and that come from sharing information across the country. So yeah, it's a lot of I know a couple of NFL guys that's members here in Dallas. They're going to be guest coaches. I mean, some went out to the 49ers, some went out to the Cardinals, and they came in and they were talking about how much they're learning. And then they go back and they share it with the youth coaches and as well as the high school coaches.
Well, Byron, terminology-wise, I mean, if you look at a dive, a gap, a belly, I mean, all three plays mean exactly the same thing. They're just called something different. So when you're teaching this to kids, I mean, you know, their playbooks ain't nowhere as close as the NFL's.
Right.
But when you're teaching this to kids, there's still some confusion about, you know, what a snake block is compared to a double team block. I mean, if you want to get technical. So, I mean, there's always going to be confusion on the field when the terminology is called differently by the coaches. So do you think that maybe when the coaches get together, that they maybe make it more simple for the kids or the high school coaches instead of just tell them this is the way it is?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that that do happen, and there's different names, and like you say, belly gaps and snakes, and those are different types of terminology that they use. I mean, you got a slide block and a double team block and all that. Now, one of the things that I teach receivers is the passing tree, and there's 0 through 9 routes, and I think they kind of got away from that. They just teaching players for his receiver to go out and run in certain areas, but the passing tree, you have depths and you have expectation of wherever you need to be at the completion of that route, and inspect the ball during that time and the timing of that route. So there's different depth on those routes, and I think they kind of got away from that, and I think that's why a lot of these players are being confused. That's probably why Aaron Rodgers had a lot of those receivers in the film room, because there's a different type of teaching these younger kids, and they don't quite be equipped to understand the depth and the commitment to a route, and there's confusion in between some of those routes. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's some terminologies that being used that kind of variation of different meanings of what you're trying to get to at the end of making this play work. So yeah.
Can you compensate for a player who has like ADD or something, or just is, for whatever reason, is a little slower to pick something up? Because I'm sure you have a number of guys like that. They just have a hard time learning the playbook and they're overwhelmed. It's not because they don't care. They care a great deal, but they're just overwhelmed. Or you have a player, let's say, who's illiterate, but of course, he's a great player in college, so they find a way to get him through. But now he has to, completely learn the NFL play. But can you compensate for that particular player?
You can, and you can either have him playing the same spot, same position, maybe a slot receiver. He's a more shorter receiver and real quick. So you put him on the inside versus having him learning all the different outside, inside, and left or right sides. So you might want to just put him on one side and make sure. And then sometimes you put these guys on special teams, or you put them as a returner, because they don't have to have the whole playbook to play in certain positions.
Well, here comes the bottom of the pile again. You're going to be on the receiving team. You better get ready to get on the bottom of that pile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's well, I listen. I know with the season about to get started, you guys are you guys are gearing up. Especially you and Jim. J&B Talking Shop is happening every Wednesday. I know that you guys have been going at it a little bit, not just on your golf game and talking about whether he's hitting eagles or birdies and such like that. I know that he was touting his the way he was swinging them just recently, but also that you guys have been talking a lot about the NFC East. And just because I was listening to the show, why don't you tell us what you were talking about? Who you think is aces in the NFC East?
Well, thus far, I think the Eagles are head and shoulders above the rest of the teams right now. I do see some good things happening with all the teams. But it's kind of still early. It's hard to predict because a lot of players are not playing. But I think I have predicted the Eagles are gonna be tough in the NFC East.
Yeah, say no more. You don't have to talk about everything else. We didn't have to give it any caveat or that just the Eagles are going to be the best team. We got. You already understand.
I've been watching these training camps, and it's a little different, hard to kind of catch up with the training camp because. They don't talk about some of the details, But it's a lot of injuries. I know it's a lot of injuries. A lot of teams, you get these leg injuries, hamstring injuries, and things like that. So it's kind of hard to kind of tell because they're not quite, they're not quite full go yet. So.
Well, Byron, we appreciate you coming on. I know that we appreciate you taking all the time out to come on and discuss with us some football. And we can find you on Wednesday nights at J&B Talk and Shop with Jim Jeffcoat. If you get to see them, they are very spirited when they go back and forth. I know that Jim is always touting his Cowboys, and unfortunately, he doesn't get to talk much about the Giants because the Giants aren't doing so hot right now. They can't even figure out who their quarterback's going to be.
Stop already. But we know who the quarterback is, please.
Oh, do you? Because
guys, when do we give our predictions for the NFL for the season? I mean, it's
the last
Sunday, right before.
Yeah, last preseason week we gave it a prediction, but I had my Giant hat on. He didn't like that, so he was smelling. He was really getting sad. I had melted him. Then I put my glasses on so I can say I could see him because I don't know if he did what he said he did out there on the golf course. So
I want to become filthy rich. So I'm gonna check out these sports books what I could lay on the Jets to win the Super Bowl.
Wow.
What do you think my odds are gonna be? Like
10,000 to 1.
10,000 to 1 or what?
that shirt that you wearing, Jack, is you might well put it in the trash can.
You know what'll happen. I'll make the bet, but I won't be able to find my ticket.
There you go. Yeah, they wind up winning, and then it just disappeared. It faded in the sun because you never took it out of the car. So, well, Byron, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Next week, same time.
All right, you guys have a great weekend.
You too.
You do the same.
Bye.
And we'll be back after just a few moments. And like I said, Keith Engel should be joining us right after the break. So give us a few minutes, and we will be right back after these messages.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride Experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
Please, give him out.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help? I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, But one of these days, a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get us any.
And we are back. And we welcome Keith Engel as I threw him right in the mix since he bring it right on in, right from the gate there after watching all of our paid sponsors. How do you think that they afford to pay us the big bucks here?
Imagine that. Joe Green. Are we getting as much as Joe Green got for that Coke commercial? That's what I don't know.
It's so funny. Like I said, I have a Mean Joe Green jersey because I used to tell people that I was the kid in that video. So it's funny when I did it on TikTok and I told them that I was the kid. I had half of Pittsburgh thinking that it was me. So I loved being able to kind of tell that tall tale, as you will.
That's awesome.
I just want to say, it was unfortunate that Keith didn't stick with me with the Yankees and he went his separate ways and he cut a deal with Mac. His Yankee card suspended for 1 year instead of 2. I refused the deal and I'm on the verge of getting my card back.
We're not sure about that yet.
Yeah, and like I said, I have 2 guys here literally with no Yankees card, yet follow the Yankees religiously. And first off, I got the guy, Jack, who is, usually if you're a Yankees fan, you're a Giants fan, but he breaks that mold, being a Yankee and a Jets fan. And I have the other guy who's a Yankee and a Patriots fan, which is even worse. I feel like that's just straight out bandwagon in total.
Oh my God! Stop, man. You got to remember, now I got to defend myself because I've been accused of these things before. You got to remember, I'm 62 years old when I started watching football. All my friends were Jets or Giants fans because the Jets had just won a Super Bowl or their dads were Giant fans. Yankees stunk, by the way, in the early 70s and late 60s. So I started following these and the Patriots were awful. I went to a game with a friend of his family. In 1971, I became a Patriot fan for life right then and there.
What made you become a Patriots fan, though, in that game, that you went to that game and said, hey, this team stinks out loud. They're my favorite team.
Jim Plunkett.
He was a Patriot at that point.
He was. He was a rookie when I first saw him. I enjoyed watching him throw the ball to Randy Vitaja, his college teammate at Stanford. And it was fun to watch. They actually beat the Kansas City Chiefs, who were pretty good at the time. And it was a fun experience, and I became a Patriot rooter ever since.
Was Jim Nantz before your time?
Jim Nantz would have been a little before I started watching. It was late 60s, I think he was there. Maybe he was there in 70. But
Gino Cappelletti was my time.
Yeah, Gino Cappelletti was doing some radio and stuff when we had season tickets out there in the 80s. Listen, again, I sat through a 1-in-15 season out there as a season ticket holder in the 80s, so I can tell you I'm not a bandwagon jumper.
So, Jack, I know that you've been around for a long time. What team did Moses play on? I heard that he was a real good football player. Was able to part the defense really well.
It was the team that Jack founded. It was the Dead Sea Scrolls.
No longer. I mean, they came and they went the team. Yeah.
We thought it was very imaginative. We called it.
Listen, those used to be fun days with the Patriots, the Boston Patriots. They were awful.
Yeah.
But, you'd have guys like Dave Pirelli on that team. It was kind of like a golden age, especially the early years of the AFL.
They played at Fenway at that point.
Listen, Dave Pirelli actually was Joe Namath's backup on the Jets Super Bowl winning team.
Right.
But he had more value than being a backup. He had no value being backup. He was awful. I mean, awful as a backup. But he was the holder for the kicker, Jim Turner. And Jim Turner had an outstanding season the year they won the Super Bowl. Then they released Dave Pirelli, and Turner's performance went down. So that taught me the value of a holder for a place kicker. That's when I first learned about it.
So you're telling me Bay Pirelli is the most responsible for the Jets Super Bowl victory?
I think, Jim Turner made 3 field goals. Bay Pirelli was the holder throughout the season as well.
There you go.
But when he left the following season, Jim Turner did complain about it, why his performance wasn't as good. There was something about the way Bay Pirelli would place the ball down in the laces. But he was an early quarterback there with the Boston Patriots. You had guys like on the Denver Broncos. Cookie Gilchrist was a monster.
I got to tell you, you're the king of the clipboard holders there, Jack. All the guys hold the clipboards better than anybody.
Yeah, well, listen, that movie Rudy, we were joking around, myself and someone once, who we were, and I made myself out to be the All-American. And he said, no, you're the guy who went up to Rudy and said, I think this is a wonderful thing. You're playing. You remember the guy who held the clipboard?
I do, yeah.
That was my fault in real life. Yeah.
And Brian Hoyer will play in the remake, for sure.
Brian Hoyer is a reincarnation of Dave Pirelli.
Well, and I was going to say, how much playing time do you think Brian Hoyer is going to get this year?
Any is a bad news for the Patriots. So I will hope 0. Or
is he back up?
I want to see him on the victory formation. That's all I want to see him. That's it.
Is he the primary backup?
At the moment, we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure that Zapp will be, but I think right now it's Hoyer.
Well, I mean, obviously, Belichick must really like him. I mean, he's been there for a little while now, right? And I guess the way he holds the clipboard is pretty good.
He has had, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 3 tours of duties with the Patriots now. So he does like him. He brings him out. He's a kind of a coach on the staff. We talked about that in the past. And I just don't want to see him in the games. That's all.
A lot of teams use them as film studiers and coaches in the quarterback room, and that's where they're most valuable, not so much what they do on the field.
That's a great point, Mac. Great point, for sure. But I don't want to see him on the field. That's it.
So, you know what? I wanted to bring this up just because it's so ridiculous, but yet it's been circulating a little bit. But the Baltimore Ravens put their 21-game winning streak on the line here, and I think is it tonight that they put it on the line?
I think
maybe tomorrow, or it might be Sunday. I know that it's coming up that they are putting this winning streak on the line. Is it goofy? Is this a goofy streak? Is it
Very
something
goofy.
worth mentioning?
No, it's the most goofy winning streak ever in the history of winning streaks. It doesn't matter. It's cool, I guess, but whatever. Does it really matter in the grand scope of things? No.
Well, so. However, the Ravens, actually, it's on Sunday. They play against the Cardinals, as the Dirty Birds will be playing against each other. The Ravens, actually, as they understand it's a joke as well, but because they are the beneficiaries of this, obviously they won 21 games in a row, and they haven't been putting their starters in. It's not like that they have been going out of their way to try to win these games, other than the fact that if it comes close, I mean, I do believe that they've had a chance where it was going to be a tie, and they went for 2 and made that 2 points, and they wound up winning these games. There has been a couple of games like that winning 21 games, whether they count or not. Should that be actually respected a little bit, that maybe their backups and the way that they draft and the way that they choose people is better than these other teams, or the way that they're doing their practices and such like that? Because ultimately you're getting the rest of the team, the other part of the 90 that may not make the 53-man roster playing these games, and you have these certain schemes and the way that you're teaching it and the way you're doing these things to win 21 games in a row in anything.
Yeah.
We're only playing 4 or 3 games a year now. So, I mean, this has been going on for 7 years. The last game that they lost was in 2015 in preseason. It's got to stand for something, I would think.
I have a hard time getting excited about it. Yes, it might mean that winning preseason games are more important to them. And, as you said, they might as well go for 2 at end of games to try to win. It's going to help you in a regular season in that same situation. So maybe the way they approach preseason games a little bit different, and it makes it more fun for their fans. I'm sure preseason games are much more interesting for Baltimore Raven fans than they are for the rest of us these days, because nobody else is really playing to win games necessarily.
Let's be honest about it. We would tune in at the end of a Raven game, any one of us, to watch it tonight. As a part. And if they didn't have that streak, we wouldn't go out of our way to tune into the end of a Raven game. But we'll hear like they're tied up and there's 5 minutes left. We're going to want to watch it, to see whether the Ravens win or not and keep it going.
You got a mouse in your pocket?
Yet it means something to us as fans, at least.
I wonder if you got a mouse in your pocket, because who's we? Because I won't be tuning in to watch the end of that Ravens.
Yeah, and it's actually on Sunday Night Football. So there's going to be football this Sunday night, and it literally is the Ravens against the Cardinals that they are playing and everything.
That makes it a little more interesting.
So, I mean, there's not going to be any other sports really on. I don't know. Let's see.
Well, Keith is saying he would rather watch the Yankees losing 9-2 coming up the bat in the 9th inning than catch the end of the Ravens.
So, all right, here you go. What do you watch?
Joey Gallo grab a bat.
What will you be watching? Here's what the lineup is going to be. You have the option of watching the Red Sox Orioles,
or that's a Sunday night game.
That's a Sunday night game at 7 o'clock at night, or the Ravens and Cardinals at 8 o'clock. So even if the Red Sox Orioles go 9 innings, you're still going to be able to watch football and watch who wins the Ravens game at the end of that.
Yeah, I think Cozy TV has Columbo on Sunday nights. That might be what I'll be watching. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love MASH, the MASH reruns.
I like Andy Griffith and Coma Pyle.
Andy Griffith.
There you go. And the Mad New Yorker comes right in and says, yeah, obviously because he's probably a Giants fan. He's just trying to show fade whatever, because the Giants fan, the only thing that the Giants have a streak of is losing seasons and starting out 1-4 for 4 seasons in a row.
Well, the Mad New Yorker is going to tell you that he doesn't like the games at all, because we just had a long debate over not just preseason games, but training camp in general isn't important in the NFL. And I told him how he's nuts. But
Carlos has no conception of what it is, I think, to play football or coach football. He says he knows, but by his comments, it's obvious that he doesn't. I mean, this is why we have football.
You must be stealing the comments right from my show, Mac. That's what they all keep saying. You never played the game.
Must not have. I don't see any proof of that. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, it depends on the level that you played the game. I mean, if you played two-hand touch on a regular basis, you played intramurals in college. I mean, you're playing the game. I mean, I took a football class in college. And they kept pounding into me, single wing, right formation, unbalanced line. I learned one play, at least. I mean, is that playing the game? And then they take you out to the field and you try to execute.
See, that's the problem right there. That's the problem right there. You can't have an AFC, NFC favorite, and they can't be part of the same city. Yeah, I mean, that's like saying, oh, I'm a Yankees and a Mets fan.
No.
And a Knicks and a Nets fan.
Pags, you hit one of my pet peeves right on target. I was going to say that if you didn't say it. That's the biggest problem.
There is reasons for that. When I was a Yankee fan, of course, my dad was from Brooklyn, and my grandfather was a Mets fan. And we were at his house one day, the Mets World Series, I think it was 69 was on. And of course, I watched the World Series with him. I got to know all the Mets players at that time. So, I mean, listen, you can root for two teams. There's different levels. If they play each other, of course, you got to pick one. But you can root for two teams. There's nothing against the law there.
Nah.
I agree with Mac. I'm a Yankee fan. I want the Mets to do well. But I'm a Yankee fan. I want them to do well. If the Yankees fell out of contention, I'm rooting for the Mets to win the World Series because they represent my city.
Yeah,
That's
I won't.
the way I look at it. I'm a Jet fan, but I root for the Giants to do well. Why would I want to root against the team in my own city? You know, it depends on personalities. I'm a Net fan, but it's hard not to root against them, with all the drama with Kyrie and Durant. I'm sick of it.
I don't root for anybody in those situations. I just watch the game and hope for a good game. I might root for individual players on other teams. I root for Donnie Mattingly. I root for Don Mattingly to do well with the Marlins. Am I a Marlins fan? No, I could care less about the Marlins, right? But I will never have. I have one team in every sport, and that's it. I can't do.
But do you root against another team in your city? That's the point. I'm not saying you have to root for them. You root against them. Look, if the Phillies are playing the Mets, I'm a Yankee fan. I'm going to root for the Mets to beat the Phillies. Then again, maybe I'm going to, take Keith Hernandez's advice and not even watch the games because the Phillies play such terrible fundamental ball, according to Hernandez. I'm
trying to get me riled up. He's trying to get me riled up for this series. I'm already excited for this series. I'm going to be there for the games. We're going to be there and representing Philadelphia. And I hope to see Keith Hernandez because, like I said, he could be walking through the stadium and ain't nobody even going to recognize him. And I'm going to say, hey, listen, did you ever get anything taken care of with that, with Congress, when you were talking about how you didn't do drugs and stuff like that?
No, that's a cheap shot, Pags. You don't go there.
Is it a cheap shot?
Earlier. Why not?
Right. Hey, he's the one that lived his life. I didn't. I didn't live his life.
Everything's open. Everything's fair game. Come on.
It makes you think. No one mentions that with the Hernandez, if there's any Hall of Fame talk, because what he did supposedly is not a performance enhancer in any way. Tell me, could it be perceived as such?
Cocaine can be a performance enhancer, I suppose.
Yeah, and the other guys, the PD use steroids. They feel that maybe enhance their performance, so they hold it against them.
Jack, he's not in the Hall of Fame because he's not Hall of Fame worthy. His numbers don't hold up.
That's nonsense. He's got golden. He's not
Hall of Fame worthy.
He has. Listen, this man has more Golden Gloves at first base than I think Lou Gehrig does.
Is that the only reason, though? What other?
Yeah,
he was also a good hitter. He batted around 300 guys. You can't take that away from a player.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Does Don Mattingly belong in Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Okay, well, at least I'll give you that. If Keith Hernandez goes, Don Mattingly better go in with him. That's all I'll say.
Or before him, really.
Before him.
Yeah, first off, I think that if they didn't put him in there, that would make it from the Hall to just the Hall of pretty good. Like I said, he won 2 championships, but he was the afterthought on both of those championships. He was a good player. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but he had so many other better players around him that he just got lost in that mix. He wasn't. All right, so he played first base pretty well. You know who could play first base pretty well? Me. I could play first base pretty well. You know what I mean? I may not be able to hit as well as he could, but I could definitely field just as well. So I don't want to hear that. I mean, it's like he said, he had good players around him.
Sure.
The Wizard of Oz was on the St. Louis team. And like I said, you had Gary Carter, Strawberry, Doc Gooden, Lenny Dykstra, all on that Mets team that won. So don't tell me that he was all this great. And he might have been the co-captain of that team, but there was another person who was louder and more important on that team. He was the afterthought on both of those teams. And that's okay because he won his rings. He's got those rings, and you can't take that away from him. He did win 9 Gold Gloves. That's perfect. That's awesome. He batted somewhere around 300 and in a time when a lot of people were batting 300. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think he's that great. I don't think he was that great. I don't think that he's Hall of Fame worthy.
That's
look at his body work. Look at the great work he's doing as a broadcaster for the Mets.
See,
put it in
see, now, see,
yeah.
here you go. You got Carlos coming in and saying, if he wasn't on that team, they don't win. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. They had so much talent on that team, so much talent that it didn't matter whether he was on there or not. You could have put anybody on that team playing first base, and they would have won. No doubt in my mind.
And I have a big problem. I brought this up with Pags before that, he was and again, he was a leader, but he makes an out in that sixth game of the World Series that they came back and won. He goes to the clubhouse and has a cigarette. He leaves. He's undressing to go home.
He hadn't had a cigarette all game. He was held out long enough. He had to finally take it.
Come on. But he was getting dressed to go home, for crying out loud. He had to get back in uniform. Jeez.
Yeah, and that's all of that is bop, 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 bop. That's all he is he's trying to remain relevant. That's what it is to me. He's trying to remain relevant, in the broadcast booth because he ain't got nothing else. He's trying to throw shade to the Phillies because he's not a Phillies fan. That's okay. When we knock you out of the playoffs there, Keith, I want to hear about how, their defense really stinks. But I'm going to go watch the Pirates play, the Mets play the Pirates, because their defense is stellar. Get out of here. Shut up, Keith. You ain't got nothing really nice to good to say. Nobody cares what you say. Except
I actually have a problem. I don't have a problem with his opinion. I have a problem with him saying it's not worthy of me going to watch or do the game.
Well, you want on it. No. He's saying the Phillies can pitch. The Phillies can hit. He gave them their due. He said, but he just doesn't like watching them. That's it.
Yeah, he didn't want to do the game.
Purist. He feels the game has to be played a certain way, and they make too many fundamental mistakes.
Don't disagree with
him.
him.
Appreciation of the game, how it should be played, and the Phillies play it worse than any team in Major League Baseball. He just doesn't enjoy watching. There's nothing he likes about Philadelphia, even going there.
Yeah.
Okay? He doesn't want to know from it, and
look what happened to Santa Claus. I mean, he goes down there trying to spread a little Christmas cheer, and they snowball him.
First off, let if you want to tell the story, tell it right. It happened probably before you were born, Mac, which is a long time ago. And he was a bad Santa. They get some drunk Santa because the Santa decided not to show up. The real Santa decided not to show up, so they get some guy who's half disheveled, and he laughed the entire time. He was drunk as a snake. And he actually says the guy who played the Santa said it was the most fun time he ever had at a football game because he's sitting there and he's bobbing and weaving the snowballs because it was hysterical. And the team stunk out loud. Actually, they played that game. I think by winning that game, they lost out on O.J. Simpson. So there were so many things that happened involved with that story. But everybody loves to say, we threw snowballs at Santa. You know what? They've killed people at Chiefs and Raiders games. You don't ever hear about anybody saying, hey, remember the guy who got killed at the Chiefs game? You remember the guy who got killed at the Raiders game? No, you don't ever hear about that. You hear about snowballs at Santa.
We hear about the guy
the media. Don't go the way of the mainstream media. We are above that here in Northeast sports.
Philly has been known as a city where the people in leadership roles in sports have taken cheap shots constantly. For example, case in points, Chuck Bednarik standing over Frank Gifford with that savage hit showing off. Buddy Ryan, one of the kings of the cheap shots, even though I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for him because he was co-defensive coordinator on the Jets Super Bowl winning team. But still, he's an abrasive blankety blank, and he ordered his guys to take cheap shots. He ordered his guys to humiliate other teams, Randall Cunningham, rather than taking a knee at the end of the game, he ordered him to pass.
Deserved it, though. They absolutely deserved that. That was that, and I know exactly you're talking about Dallas. When they brought their team back and they ran up the score, he purposely ran up the score because he didn't like him. He didn't like Buddy Ryan. So you had, what's his face over there, Tom Landry, who ran up the score with, they had a full team, and Buddy Ryan was very specific. When the team went out on strike, he said, listen, you stay together as a team. You want to come back, everybody comes back. You stay, or if you're going to stay away, everybody stays away. Do not cross the picket line. You're in Philadelphia. It's important here. That's the way you got to do it. So if you're going to come back, everybody come back. If you're going to stay away, everybody stay away. So we wound up having a whole ragtag team completely, and Tom Landry ran up the score. So to get some payback later on that year, because we had a much better team than Dallas did that year, that we made sure that instead of taking the knee, we threw the touchdown and shoved it up Tom Landry's derriere because he deserved it. He absolutely deserved it.
Going to be a lot of sound bites for the Philly sports guy out of this show today. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's sometimes Jack can get right underneath my skin.
Listen,
he knows how to get there.
Let me back up to Santa Claus for 1 second. I'm going to have to defend Philadelphia fans because I remember that year and I know what Santa brought me for Christmas, and he deserved to get hit with snowballs. Let me tell you, I remember that year very well. So
Philly exactly. It's a hype guy city. Even in boxing, there's a thing known as the Philly Gym Wars. I mean, there's supposed to be sparring sessions, work together. New York, the fighters work together in sparring. They know it's not the real fight. They're not going at full speed, but that's the way they go in Philly. That's why the fighters are burning out. Every time it's a fight when they're in the gym, they should be sparring.
Yeah, but that's why some of the best champions ever came from Philadelphia. You know, like Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier, I think, was obviously the top of the line. You have, Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah.
Floyd Merriweather. Wasn't he from Philadelphia too? Isn't he Philadelphia?
Oh, don't get too wrong on Floyd Merriweather.
Wasn't he a Philadelphia guy, or he did his training in Philadelphia? Maybe that. I don't think he's.
What's the
Floyd,
name? I missed.
Floyd Merriweather.
No. Floyd Mayweather didn't have a Philadelphia link. Exactly.
Okay. I thought he did a lot of his training in Philly.
He was from Grand Rapids. He's from Michigan. Originally before relocating to Las Vegas. Yeah, but Philadelphia was a place where a lot of fighters would come to. Listen, Marvin Hagler went to Philadelphia to fight on the way up when he couldn't get fights before he was champion, to fight the top Philadelphia fighters like Benny Briscoe, Willie Monroe, Eugene Cyclone Hart. That's how he had his apprenticeship, Marvin Hagler, coming up to Philadelphia. So he, in a way, had, Philadelphia in his blood, Marvin Hagler. Even though he was from Brockton, Massachusetts, he was an honorary Philadelphia guy.
Right, because they know, like, if you were having a hard time and you needed to learn some heart, different than the Rocky III movie, where if you needed some heart, you went to Philly. You didn't go anywhere else. That's where you learned heart, because that's what they taught you there. That's what you learned from all the other boxers, because they did go all out in practice. They did test your mettle.
That's why Stallone picked Philadelphia. He could have picked any other city to do a takeoff for the movie, but it's interesting he picked Philadelphia because of the great tradition that they had. By the way, Keith Hernandez likes boxing. He never said he wouldn't go to Philadelphia for a big fight. It's just the Phillies brand of baseball. It's not against the city itself. It's just the Phillies brand of baseball just isn't his cup of tea. That's all there is to it.
So Jack sees you settle down a little bit, and he just kind of like relights the flame.
He's trying. It doesn't matter. Like I said, hopefully I get to see him. I know that if you guys are watching the broadcast today, because the Philly sports guy is going to be there in all his splendor, they'll show me on the Mets broadcast, and I want to hear what he's got to say specifically about me. I'd love to be able to make sure he sees one of my clips on how I feel like about him, or have me go up there and be like, hey, I'd love for him to bring me up to interview me, because I would actually bring it right to him. I'd be like,
I am going to broker a compromise here, okay? I'm going to broker a compromise. Keith Hernandez is going to be told, Keith, you have to do this game. He's going to do it from his home, his studio. He won't actually go to Philly to do it.
Oh, you can do it with Paul O'Neill.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? So, first off, I don't believe that that's going to happen. And I was supposed to, there was a possibility I was going to be able to get a chance to see Barry Larkin as the Reds are coming into town. But Barry Larkin got COVID, and now he may not make it, and they may actually call the Phillies game from Cincinnati, a la via, pre-pandemic. And so I'm not gonna. It's possible I'm not gonna meet Barry Larkin, which is a little upsetting. I thought that he would be a good
And
person.
I want to detour a little. Let me ask Keith a question. I haven't heard Keith talk about it. Maybe you have, Keith. I just haven't heard about it. The Derek Jeter series. Did you watch it?
I did. It was good, but obviously he had a heavy hand in editing the thing. So I want to see more, just similar to the Michael Jordan in the Last Dance, having too much editorial control. I thought Derek had too much editorial control here. I would like to have seen more stuff that I already didn't know about. I don't need more self-promotion about Derek Jeter.
He talked about A-Rod. I mean, he did address that.
That was probably the most newsworthy thing of the whole thing. But is it really newsworthy? Because we already knew what the situation was with those two guys. It was all right. It was fun to watch, but I didn't learn that much new.
I thought it was a great series.
I thought it was good. I just I didn't glean anything I really didn't know. I don't think out of the whole thing.
I mean,
I still don't believe that he didn't give care packages. I know.
I don't either. I think
I think he absolutely gave care packages.
He should have come clean about the care packages. I agree.
Yeah, that's just like yeah, exactly. We know, Derek.
Listen, let me tell you why I believe Derek Jeter on that. Because if he really did give out the care packages and said he didn't, some women would come forward. Now it becomes bigger news. So I don't believe, he gave that. He said he didn't. Take him at his word.
Hey, listen, I read it
because they believe. We should believe everything that they say.
It was on page 6, the gossip part of the New York Post, so it had to be true. Had to be true.
So I agree. It's like if there's smoke, there's fire, and like I said, he was a playboy. He was a playboy in New York, and God bless him. We can only aspire to do that type of stuff.
Let me tell you what I didn't understand. Some of the people they had speak who were supposed to be influential in their life, what the heck was Jimmy Rollins doing on there? He was so insignificant to Jeter's life, but no one was comparing Rollins to Jeter, even though Rollins was a terrific player, in all due respect. I mean, I could see Norma Garcia-Parra because there was a comparison. That was fine, for a while. But Jimmy Rollins, he wasn't his teammate. They played against one another in the World Series, and that's as far as it went.
Look at Jeter. I don't need to know more about his romances. I don't care about the gossip part. Yeah, and I joke around about the care package, the gift packages. Who cares? I care about the fact that he was one of the greatest Yankees of all time, a great winner, and he was a great leader on some great teams, and that's what I care about. And the Yankee team could use him right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think the reason why, and I haven't seen this. I didn't see not 1 minute of this Jeter thing. The reason why they would have even brought Rollins in the mix is because they were both touted as the best in their leagues, their respective leagues, the shortstops. So even though Jeter himself, he had some defensive issues a little bit, like he was still considered one of the best, if not the best, shortstop of the American League when he played. And Jimmy was listed as the best shortstop in the National League when he played. And that's the only real comparison between the two of them. I don't think
did Barry Larkin play the same time as Jimmy Rollins?
No,
right?
Barry Larkin was at the back end of his career. I think.
Yeah, they played. Yeah, it overlapped. Yeah.
So they did play. They didn't play together, but they did play some at the same time. But Barry Larkin was on his way out.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's really the only thing that they have that they could actually say happened at the exact same time. Plus the fact that they did both play in the 2009 World Series, and if just imagine if none of the vitamins made the trip for A-Rod, how that series could have changed.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask Mac this. Joey Votto is injured. He's going to be out the rest of the year for Cincinnati. He's 38, probably towards the end of his career, even though, maybe he'll squeeze out a couple more years. Who knows? Who's more Hall of Fame worthy, Joey Votto or Keith Hernandez?
Keith Hernandez, easily. Keith Hernandez, easily. He has the stats. He's played on the winning teams. He was a captain on the teams he played on. I mean, I don't know how you can keep Keith Hernandez out of the Hall of Fame. Him and Don Mattingly both belong. Craig Nettles belongs in the Hall of Fame. So there's no reason why to hold him back. I mean, he isn't gambling. He isn't doing drugs. The man is a great leader on the field. And
he did do drugs.
He did do drugs. We already established that, right? That's.
But I won't hold that against. I'm not going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame because of that, Mac, either. I don't agree with. I wouldn't do that.
Listen, people were searching for things. Keith just mentioned Derek Jeter's love life. He couldn't care less. As I recall, when Hernandez played in New York, his teammates gave him a nickname: anytime, any place, anywhere, Hernandez. So he was quite a guy who ran around, in his heyday.
Listen, we were talking about documentaries. We talked about the Jeter one. If you haven't seen it, maybe you have the ESPN documentary about the '86 Mets. Was really, really good, and I thought dove deeper into inside things than the Jeter one did. Even better than The Last Dance. I thought that was really. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was now. Something in Queens, but it was a great. It was like 5 or 6 episodes. It was really, really good and well done. And you saw a lot of inside stuff there that you may not have necessarily thought about before.
I read the book, The Bad Guys Won. I think it was Jeff Pearlman about the '86 Mets. And when they beat the Astros to go to the World Series, they beat them in Houston. And they're flying back to New York. They wrecked the plane. They were getting out. You could smell vomit, not only on them, but their wives and girlfriends. It was disgusting.
Those guys played and hard out.
Disgusting.
I
mean,
hanging off the field for sure.
I mean, there should be a code of conduct. I mean, we talk about morality in the NFL. You guys are going to laugh at me. You act like that. You wreck a plane as adults, okay? Wreck an airplane and do all that. I would have banned them from playing in the World Series. I mean,
that's what they should have did. Definitely in 1986. Listen, you guys wrecked the plane. You guys forfeit your chance to play. Boston, you win the World Series without a game.
If you can't listen, if this was an NFL player doing that, wouldn't he have been suspended from playing in the Super Bowl?
No. Absolutely not. They would. You don't think that's happened that many times? They've ruined hotel rooms and things like that. I mean, let's.
Maybe they would have suspended them the next season for a game and not the Super Bowl.
Next season. Yeah, you got to let the world.
And let me. They ruined that plane. All that plane was a mess. Blah blah blah. You don't think the Mets ownership paid for it?
Well, they shouldn't have. No. You have to let him play the World Series. I was just playing devil's advocate. But the following season, there should have been every guy on that plane. And you stagnated, so you have a team on the field. Should have been hit like with a 5-game suspension or something.
Oh, come on. I disagree wholeheartedly. The Mets ownership, I'm sure, covered the bill on getting that dry cleaned completely.
That type of behavior, Pax.
You know what? I don't necessarily approve of it, but I know kind of what the world was like back then. So, and I can imagine what was happening on that plane. Like that it went wild, that they were going crazy because, one, they weren't supposed to really be there. And 2, now that they're there, they're celebrating. And you got to tell me that Strawberry and Doc Gooden and Lenny Dykstra, that those guys were just going to be like, hey, we're going to just take this plane back and just be nice and calm. Get out of here. There was a party waiting to happen. And I got to imagine it went crazy. It went crazy.
Just because the Philly sports fans burn cars and ruin things doesn't mean all the fans do.
We don't burn cars. We didn't. Everybody likes to say that we burned anything. We didn't burn anything when we celebrated. I don't want to hear it. Blah, 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 blah. We weren't Vancouver when we burned the city down after we lose. We win and we climbed the poles. That was the thing. We had to grease the poles up. They put Vaseline on the poles so we couldn't climb them. Guess what? We still were able to climb them. So that's what everybody was talking about. Everybody's crying, oh, we burned the city down. We didn't burn anything down. There was nothing burnt down. So again, stop listening to the mainstream media. We are above this here at Northeast Streaming Sports. Stop going the way of all the other goofballs out there. They love bagging on Philadelphia.
Silent. Mic drop there. You're done.
Exactly. Because everybody wants to give us grief about being who we are.
You guys
just
have
because
a
we're
prison.
more intelligent.
You guys have a prison and a judge in your own stadium.
No, we don't.
Yes, you do.
No, we don't. You want to bet on that? Because it happened in the vet, because so many people were coming, and this is what would happen. So many people, like away fans, would come to start trouble, and that's why they put it in there. They would have a holding tank, and because they didn't want to bring everybody down to the Roundhouse, because the Roundhouse, where you'd have to take 2 buses out of there every game. So you would have more people that were not from Philadelphia wind up having to get tried and convicted by that judge, Judge McCaffrey. I know who he is exactly. He would go down there and they would expedite these cases. And because a lot of these people that were going into court and going to jail were not from Philadelphia. So to be able to expedite this, they would send them through, they'd put them in the holding tank, they would sober them up a little bit, then they would bring them to court, and then hit them with the fine and then send them on their way because they had to leave. They didn't want to be stuck having to, with these people left in Philadelphia. They'd rather just send them back home. That's what would happen, and that's why we had a court. There were some Philadelphia people that would go there, but they were usually provoked by other teams' fans. And those teams' fans, that's why the court was really there. So everybody loves to call, hey, the Philadelphia had a jail in the thing. It was a holding tank to sober these people up because other fans would come here, wouldn't be able to deal with Philadelphia properly, and then cause problems, have fights, and then you'd have to convict them. And rather than make them, force them to stay longer because we don't want this riffraff here, we would send them back home expeditiously.
Yeah, I will back up Pegs a little bit because Philly gets a bad rap, I think, because coming from where I watch football games with being a season ticket holder in Foxborough for 10 seasons in the old stadium, I'd been to Philadelphia to a game the Patriots played there, and it was much calmer in Philadelphia than it was in Foxborough ever. You never saw so much security and people getting carried out of games in your life as you'd see at Foxborough Stadium, I can tell you right now. So I think some cities like Philadelphia get a bad rap, and this goes on
everywhere. Like I said, nobody's ever been killed at any sporting event in Philadelphia. Yet you go to Kansas City
you're
and
not
you get a
allowed
chance.
to root for your team in Philadelphia. I've spoken to Giant fans who've gone to Philadelphia to the Fed, and they tell me
they're just soft.
There.
They are soft people.
Wear their Giant, gear on.
In the
they're soft. They're soft.
Themselves as Giant fans. They have to be quiet there.
In the 80s, I went and root there, and I'm not. Maybe the things have changed. I was there in the 80s, and I had my full gear on, and I was fine. I was scared in the Meadowlands wearing my Patriot gear more than I was in Philadelphia. I can tell you that.
Yeah, Jets fans are much worse.
Oh, I was afraid to leave the stadium.
Jets fans are timid. The only fans more timid.
I tell you, here's the story. Here's the story I have about Jets fans. I went to one game. I went to one Jets Miami game. Of course, now I'm an Eagles fan, so I got invited to go to this game. So I went up there at the old MetLife Stadium, or Giant Stadium.
Yeah.
And the Jets are there, and there's this little girl who's all dolphined up, yelling at this Jets fan. And this guy is like a construction worker. He's a big, burly dude. And she's bapping. And they're right up on the rail. So they're up on the second level, and they're up on the rail. She finally says something and does whatever. He grabs her by her leg. This girl's about 100 pounds maybe, and holds her over the rail to almost like he was going to drop her. He didn't go to drop her, but everybody stops. Security comes running, everything. The guy winds up pulling her back over. They escort her out of the thing. He probably got arrested or whatever. But I've never seen that from anybody. She didn't do much more talking after that. There was no more talking from her. So, but that happened literally at a Jets-Dolphins game. So don't tell me that they're soft in New York for Jets. They're soft now because the Jets been stinking out loud for the last 10 years. Just saying. Just saying.
Just saying.
So I mean, so we actually, this has been fun here today. I love. You want to get me all riled up for this Phillies Mets series? I'm excited about it now. Now I wasn't before, but now I'm raring to go.
You mentioned the Dolphins, guys. I'm going this season to a Dolphin game in Miami against the Packers. But with my luck, Aaron Rodgers will be out, and I'll be seeing Jordan Love quarterbacking for the Packers.
I think you'd be lucky to see Jordan Love play quarterback.
Is it Christmas Day? Is that a Christmas Day game?
Yeah, that's it.
There you go. That should be a fun game. At that point, the Dolphins should probably be already figuring out who they're tanking for their next quarterback.
Yeah, the Packers will be in contention.
I hope Santa doesn't go there. That's all I got to say.
So, you know what? The good thing about Dolphins fans is that the few fans that they do have, because anytime you go to a Miami game as an opposing fan, you guys take over that stadium. The opposing team takes over the stadium because everybody loves going to Miami, and It's just a warm weather area. So you always have 20,000 of your closest friends when you're an opposing team going to that stadium. The Eagles, like I said, usually have 25 to 30,000 that go to that. But the fans that are the Miami fans that are there are loyal Miami fans, and they get all dressed up. They are super fans over there, and I tell you, some of the super fan ladies over there are fun to watch, just in general, because first off, you're in Miami, and you know there's a certain look that goes with being in Miami. So
Jeff Coach said when he played, he was more distracted when he played in Miami. You know, it's harder to focus on the game.
Yeah, because everybody almost looks like a cheerleader. And of course, it's the scantily clad women that get offered free tickets by the gentlemen who are interested in going to the game with somebody. Almost like they're working women.
Let me tell you what they didn't do in the past. We started this segment with Keith talking about the past with New England. Ticket prices used to be back in the day the same for every game on the schedule.
Yep.
Some would sell out sooner. Now they price games according to the opponent, and the Packer game against the Dolphins is their highest priced opponent. New England is next, second. The Jets are not even close for some reason, and you would think with all the New Yorkers coming down to Miami, that would be a high-priced game. The Texans are the least priced. I mean, the Packers were 4 times the amount to see them it would cost than seeing the Texans play. But then again, to sit through a Dolphin-Texan game, that could have been a little painful.
Listen, I paid less Garrett. So I'll make a concession here. I mean, the last year we had season tickets in Foxborough was in 1990, but for 10 games, because they made you buy the preseason games, it was $350 you paid for the entire season.
Yeah.
And after 10 years, we moved up because they weren't packing that place in the 80s, I can tell you. We had seats about 50-yard line, first section. We had great seats, $350. I can't get in the stadium for $350 today.
Right.
One game. That was 10. So.
Hey, we're in that same boat right now. Like, to get into an Eagles game is very expensive, and for the same amount of money. So for $325, I might be able to get within the first 10 rows of the field.
Yeah.
Just at Philadelphia Stadium. For $325, I have a lower level seat, transportation, and a tailgate happening in Washington.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So that just to tell you the disparity on things.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it is. And in Miami, they gouge anybody who wants to come down. So what happens is if you want to buy 1,000 tickets, we'll say, to the Eagles versus the Dolphins game, they make you buy 10% tickets. So you have to buy 1,100 tickets, and you have to donate 100 of those tickets to Miami schools, so that they can give those tickets away as they choose. They force you to have to buy it, or else you can't buy the tickets. You can't buy the 1,000 without buying the 100. And it all gets put into the price.
Wait, they don't sell out packs, and you call their bluff and you don't buy the 1,000 tickets. They might not sell them, so they hurt themselves, right?
They'll sell them.
Yeah, somebody else is going to buy them, or if you have 1,000 people going down, the 1,000 people are going to go to Miami either way, so they'll figure out a way to sell those tickets. It's not the big deal. They're not getting the 100 tickets extra. If you are a travel agent and you're running a big trip, you're going to have to spend the money, and it just gets rolled into the price of the ticket, but it hurts all those people that are traveling and adding money into the economy because the Dolphins choose to gouge people. And I got to imagine Jacksonville does the same.
All
that nobody
the
cares
teams,
to go to Jacksonville.
you know, all the teams do. Baseball teams are the worst. You want you want to buy tickets to the Mets and Yankees this weekend or not this weekend, but maybe next weekend it is, whenever it is. If you want to buy tickets for that, you can't buy tickets unless you buy tickets for this series over here. Same thing with the Red Sox and Yankees. So you want premium games, you got to buy some crappy games that they're worried about selling out later on. And that's just not the way to do business, right?
Well, you know, it's the service fee that gets me. You see what a ticket costs, and then they keep tacking on these extra charges.
Yeah. It's like getting a ticket.
Hold on. We're going to put the ticket is this much, but we're going to put $5 because you are doing the clicking. And to do that clicking, somebody has got to make sure that, puts a system in place. And that's what we're paying for. It's all stealing money. That's what it is. It's stealing money. It's just like if you go to StubHub or whatever. StubHub is like, whoever came up with that idea was absolute genius in terms of, hey, we're going to steal from both sides. We're going to make you have to pay a fee to sell your ticket, and then you're going to make you pay a fee to buy your ticket. And we get on both sides. We don't even own the ticket.
So is the answer the government coming in on them antitrust laws? Is that going to change anything as far as the way the teams do business? I mean, government's just as dirty as sports is.
Yeah, that's the problem. Anytime you mention antitrust, teams, you get their attention, but then Congress never follows through. So what's the point?
Right. Yeah, because they get too much money from these teams to their campaigns. So ultimately, that's what happens. It becomes more of a, oh, well, you want these premium seats right here. Well, we can give you, how about we just give you 2 seats here? And also we'll make sure that you have the right people that go into your suite so that you can, make sure that your campaign gets off on the right foot.
Yeah.
That's what happens. And of course, why would you not take that? I mean, it's all public knowledge. You see that these guys have, it shows that they pay, for their thing. But then, what you don't see is that they did a speaking engagement where they went to some dinner and they got paid the same amount of money back. It's interesting how that all plays a part there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how you can hide whatever you want to in politics and in sports. We're talking about billions of dollars, and we don't compete on that level. We don't get to see what happens on that level of sports or in that level of anything because we don't have the keys, which is 9 digits in our bank accounts.
You talk about being in the right suite. I would love to be able to sit in Jerry Jones's box, like you see his private box during a Cowboy game. You think Chris Christie is going to be invited anymore?
No, not allowed. Maybe if they play up in New York every once in a while, he'll show up, but he's no longer invited. That whole, hey, don't hug me, I'm hugging my son type of situation kind of did that. And I tell you, Jerry Jones knows me pretty well. Loves trolling me because I'm usually there with the Cowboys superfan. And every time Jerry Jones has a shot to take a Philadelphia, he's always showing my picture and always doing things. Loves putting me on the website. Loves trolling me 100%. So, I tell you,
that's quite an honor, Pax. That's from one of the great.
Listen, I do take that as an honor. When you have gotten the attention of a billionaire, I feel like that I've done something well. I'm doing my job the proper way, and he loves trolling me. Oh my Lord, he sent down a magazine. They came down 3 security. They came down to us, and they gave a magazine to True Blue, who's a part of the NFC East show. Give it to True Blue, and they say courtesy of Mr. Jones. I was the one that bought the ticket for him. Where's my magazine? I tell you, this has been a spirited day today.
Wow, I guess.
Jones was the catering industry for Yankee Stadium. That's how him and George Steinbrenner came to know each other. So
How about
that's,
that?
Yeah, that's a little.
See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Well, our 2 hours is up. Who would have thought that it would have gone this fast and it'd been this lively today?
Yikes.
So
It's all because Mac's back.
there you go.
yes.
See what happens? That's what happens
Max
when
is a
when the
staple
ringleader
of-
is back, the lions start going crazy. So, hey, listen, tomorrow we have the Saturday debate show with Dr. Paul Seminger and also Mac and Jack and myself. So we all look back tomorrow. Thank you, Keith, for joining us today for this last hour. And
Absolutely.
we will see everybody tomorrow. Again, thank you for joining us and have a great Friday.
Yeah, thanks for